you to ET Edge and AWS for hosting this fabulous series on the pioneers of technology fireside chat. Today, we have with us Mr. Kishor Patil, CEO for KPIT, and Ms. Vaishali, a leader from AWS Southeast Asia market. As we get started into this very interesting discussion around technology, I'd like to pose a question to both Kishor and Vaishali around how are you seeing the demand for digital and technology, especially skyrocketing post the COVID era. One of the things we have noticed, especially in BCG's research, is that 30% of these companies who are transforming, especially within the S&P Global 1200, are becoming digital incumbents, roughly 5% digital natives, but there is a big segment of organizations still figuring their game out. Both of you are at the center of this massive tech services wave as well. So how are you seeing business and customer demand shaping up? And what are some of the other trends that you are seeing hitting commercial scales versus others that are largely eye candy? Kishor?
If in one word, if I had to say, I would say explosive. It is nothing less than explosive. And there is more than one reason. I mean, there are some real reasons around this transformation which is happening. The number one is acceleration of electrification. Actually, that started this. And basically, from a vehicle, which was where there was software content was increasing year by year from almost zero software code to 100 million, and it was considered as a milestone sometime back. It is becoming actually a software-defined vehicle, and this change has been enormous. And the reason, as I said, one is it is accelerated by the fact that people want to be at the forefront of the changing technologies, whether it is electrification, more particularly autonomous features which are being introduced. And the third, which is very, very important, is the overall the vehicles. As you know, the number of vehicles being sold are reducing year on year. What the companies then need to do, basically OEMs, is from the revenues from the digital services have to go up. So instead of they increasing their revenues from sale of vehicle, it will move on to how they can provide services to their consumers, not only at the point of sale, but over the life of the vehicle, to all the vehicles on the road. And that is why really this push for the digital services, push for the new technologies, and that is really, really explosive.
Vaishali?
Yeah, I think very well summarized by Mr. Patil. I'll just add my perspective, which is sort of a little bit broader, not just in the automotive sector. I'll take a step back and say what I see in India, particularly, is the internet adoption has really skyrocketed for multiple reasons. We had a geo moment happening in 2017-18. There is a plethora of devices and connectivity in the country at a level which has never been seen before. Then there is the backdrop of the government's initiative on the Jam Trinity, on UPI, on essentially making us increasingly a digital economy. And on the back of connectivity, on the back of the government's ecosystem creating a more digital economy, and the cheap availability of services like cloud has accelerated digital adoption in industries that you could not imagine. I mean, if I look at it today, almost 8 out of 10 startups are born on AWS, are born on the cloud, and even brick and mortar companies now, or traditional companies, want to reinvent themselves as a technology company. If you talk to any bank, they say, we're actually a technology company in the guise of a bank. You talk to a car manufacturer, they say, we are software enabling the movement revolution, right? You talk to a restaurant or a delivery company, everybody's backbone is technology, because it's become easy to experiment. The cost of experimentation has gone down. That's on the one hand is enabling. On the other hand, you have consumption, right? What do customers want today? If your customers want, and particularly post-pandemic, customers want everything to feel frictionless and flawless. I don't want to go to a bank. I want to sit on my laptop and transact. I don't want to go to a restaurant. I want to be able to buy food, on my device. When I get from my home into my car, I want it to feel like home. I want to continue to talk to Alexa. I want to continue to buy things. I want my car to talk to me. So customers' expectations have gone through the roof, and particularly so in the last 2 years. If you talk about employees coming into work, employees want to be able to work from anywhere. So whether it's your consumer, whether it is your employee, everybody wants to be digital. So I think now all businesses in my mind are digital, trying to reinvent themselves, whether it's for their customers, whether it's for their internal IT, or it's their employees. Over to you, Abhik.
No, Vaishali, thank you so much. I think, and Mr. Patil as well, very, very pertinent points around just the immense change in how customers reacting. I think mobile internet penetration being a big driver. I think also over the past few years, while COVID has been unfortunate, but then the kind of exacerbation of tech that it has enabled has been just phenomenal. Okay. Moving on, I think, see, innovation, and when we talk about pioneers of technology, the word innovation comes very naturally, right? Both of you, be it KPIT or AWS, you have been at the forefront in your interesting dimensions, I would say. I would like to start with you, Mr. Patil, specifically on from an angle of KPIT and the kind of, if I would say, the entire auto sector. I mean, we had a net zero moment in April 2021, unfortunately. After that, there has been a plethora of we would say evolution across the entire case framework and ambition around mobility. I mean, India as a nation is pushing the e-mobility, I would say, a wave significantly hard. What we are also seeing is consumers also expecting a very different kind of service. I mean, a very blended service. And if I look at, for example, auto and then the broader auto segment, I mean, tire manufacturers are doing tire as a service. So the entire, if I would say, the phygital movement is here, and it's purely exploding. So Kishor, if we would start with you in terms of how are you innovating in this space? How are you coming to terms with, you have traditional auto manufacturers on one side, and then you have the digital native software manufacturers who are putting wheels to applications. How are you treading this path, and what are some of the interesting views that we should look forward to?
So this is very, very interesting and evolving situation right now. The first thing I would like to say is earlier, the brands, different brands of the car, and they were manufactured, they really belonged to a certain brand. And the people were buying the cars for a brand, for the way it looks. Now people are buying the cars for the software and the electronics features, what are there. And the cars are being recalled for the electronics and the software in that. So software has become so important to them. So what does it mean for those brands? The brands is the innovation, the features that they can bring, what the innovation they can bring to their consumers is defined. And that is what is being associated with the brand. I mean, people talk of company like a Tesla or something. I think it is basically because of the innovation they are bringing to the table. And that is exactly all the companies, whether you call traditional, and the way I would define that traditional or conventional is the companies who have been there for a long time. They are trying to catch up in their own way. They have very, they have their own strengths. And there are certain companies who are coming from the software side and they're trying to figuring out the other way. both are trying to innovate. They both are trying to understand the nitty-gritties of this. So what are we, where are these opportunities, how we are looking at it? One single most area is accelerating their journey. How can they accelerate the processes? Earlier, there used to take 4 or 5 years to introduce a car model and then bring it to the production. That cycle time is moving because the consumer demands are changing, their expectations are changing, the competitive pressure is there. So how do you do what used to take 5-6 years into 2 or 3 years? And how do you really bring down that time? And that is a one single most important for the innovation for us. That is one. Of course, the first one I said was the features which clients want to, and whatever we can contribute to it. I mean, for example, I'm just taking one example, is one of the it's a two-wheeler manufacturer, very high-end, mobile manufacturer in Europe. We brought in what you can call a navigation on this two-wheeler, which can bring down and which can give a lot of features of connectivity for a two-wheeler, which can bring a lot of features in terms of navigation, off-roading, etc. So, or for a car company, as Vaishali mentioned some time back, how do they have the same experience? So it is like a family traveling into a vehicle, how they can do what they were doing. And they're all devices, typically mobile. They talk to each other and they talk to the car together. So how you can create that kind of experience? So some of these features, innovation, that becomes a very, very important part. The third thing I may say, even though it looks boring, is standardization. I think everybody going its own way is not going to reduce the time for each one, and it is going to be difficult. And which areas you can standardize, and it's a race to standardization. Who is the first one, who is the best one, who can bring based on the standard solution. That is very, very important. And last but not the least is what I mentioned to you, how you can help your clients to monetize the time a consumer spends in the car. What are the ideas you can bring to the table and help them to do that? These are some of the areas we identified. And I think we have worked on technical solutions. We have worked on certain innovative ideas and then bringing it to the implementation. It's an exciting journey. Some of that you can do for yourself, some you do along with your client. And now what we are doing is really creating this ecosystem of players. I mean, companies like either it is Amazon or some other companies, and you work with these alliances to innovate together and put the full solution. So you may innovate in a particular way, but in order to for the innovation to be effective, sometimes you have to collaborate with other ecosystem players. So that's what we are trying to do, and it has been very exciting thing, because what we could do in the last 2 years is probably more than what we could do in the last 5 years.
No, very exciting, and I'm sure at this rate, years will become months and perhaps months into weeks. I think moving to you, Vaishali, Amazon and innovation have become synonymous to each other, right? We were also studying from BCG's perspective, the global 1,200 S&P companies in terms of their TSR returns, and hyperscalers return 2.5 times higher than some of the larger organizations, right? How does AWS, as one of the fastest, I would say, growing businesses within this table, look at innovation? And secondly, how much of that innovation is just purely powered internally versus how do you get your ecosystem around? I mean, today the world looks to you as an ecosystem provider. How do you look at constantly staying ahead of the curve?
Yeah. First of all, Mr. Patil really explained, the three aspects really well around innovation. I'll talk a little bit about, how we look at innovation at AWS. And there is this very interesting statistic which Andy Jassy, who was till recently, till last year, the CEO of AWS and pretty much the founder, I would say, of the thought process of when AWS was born 15 years ago. And now He is now the CEO of, all of Amazon. He has a CIO, CEO advisory council, which meets with him regularly. And what's interesting is more than 95% of the services that we launch on AWS are working backwards from things that the customers want us to do. So we will invent only on, like I said, 95% of what we create in terms of our products and services are based on what the customers are telling us to do. They will come and tell us, for example, I can quote a couple of services that we specifically have. We are also getting very industry focused. So we have several solutions which are industry focused. And if you can talk about, connected cars, mobility, etc., we launched IoT fleet-wise. We have AWS software-defined vehicle solution area to help. We have connected mobility solutions. So our customers came and told us, this is what we need, and we invented it for them. And we have several case studies, of course. So that's our fundamental principle around innovation. The other is when we are launching any business, we try to create a flywheel. For example, if I were to talk about AWS, how is it that for the last 15 years, we have been able to do what our customers have asked us to do, and we are the only cloud provider over the last 15 years who has dropped our public prices 111 times and still dropping. The reason we are able to do that is we work backwards from what the customer wants. We develop and deliver what they want. We give them a wide variety of choices. And then we go and buy infrastructure, best hardware, we create our own silicon now, and we pump it back into the ecosystem, which creates economies of scale. And then we are able to go and pass those cost reductions back to our customers. So our flywheel is always at work, whether it is AWS, whether it is any other business at Amazon. We will start with the customer and we will end with the customer. We will create economies of scale. We'll create a wide variety of choices and come back and deliver at not because I have to drop the price, but because I can afford to do so. So that's our mental model around how we innovate, not just at AWS, but even in our retail business.
No, very interesting. And I would say two very different dimensions of how innovation is playing out, and wishing both of you, I think, even more and more innovation so that you can drive betterment of both business and people. Moving on, I think we are seeing tech shifting at a really blinding pace, right? Just if you roll back 6 months, words like metaverse, Web3, etc., have just become the way we would talk about ERP in the past, right? I mean, cloud and cloud platforms, IoT have just become so much given. So that is, I would say, vector number one. On the other side, we are also seeing this huge war for talent. I mean, the great resignation, these two words have become, unfortunately, a reality for us, right? Within each of your organizations, how are you really trying to keep the best excited, also attract the best? Because today the opportunity set available to good talent is just super high. Beyond the point, young talent gets also blinded by a whole bunch of attractive offers. So how do you drive stickiness now inside from an employee dimension? Vaishali, if it's okay, we'll start with you and then we'll move to
Sure. So I think, two parts to your question. One is, all these buzzing and emerging technologies typically go through the hype cycle and then somewhere they settle down. I think as far as AWS is concerned, I don't think we yet have a very concrete offering in the metaverse space. I'm sure, I'm not a technical expert, but I'm sure there is a team looking at this demand, because you're right. The number of times I hear a customer say metaverse in a meeting has gone up. I mean, particularly after Facebook rebranded themselves as metaverse. Customers tell me, by 2025, 1 in 5 meetings every day will be in the metaverse. I want to go sell in the metaverse. So, I'll wait for this hype cycle to settle down to really understand what and how it means. And if our customers tell us that there is a use case, I'm sure we will, like I said, invent on behalf of our customers. But coming to your question on talent, I think that's a very interesting question, right? There is a war on talent. We can't get enough. Everybody needs bar raising talent, and everybody needs talent today, no matter which company or what role you're in. You need talent that is comfortable with technology, right? Which is comfortable with everything is moving to the cloud. Are you comfortable with cloud? Are you really comfortable operating in a high-tech environment, which is going to be more and more self-service? So I think we play a very humble role in this. We want to do, our mission statement in India is to help builders and businesses build a better India. And an important part of that is Project Takshila, which we have taken the onus of training millions of people in the country on cloud, not so that we can hire them, but so that the country can benefit from talent which is trained in technology, which is ready to deploy, and our customers can use it, our partners can use this talent. So we've taken some very lofty goals in India. And I think if I remember correctly, in excess of 20 million people to be trained globally in the next couple of years, and a couple of million in India. And we do this so that we can enable the tech revolution in India, and we can have our customers hire technology trained talent. And that is really our mission, so that organizations can benefit. Talent is excited to work on new technologies. We will train them and get them ready, whether it's through colleges. We have partnerships with schools. We work with women in order to train them on emerging technology trends. We have a variety of programs, and we will continue to stay committed to this cause.
Very inspiring. Kishor, your views?
Absolutely. So the way I would say is, I think Vaishali has talked about many points, so I will just highlight some of them. We do participate. I mean, it is an industry and educational institution partnerships. So we, as a part of that, we contribute to what content they can teach, what is more relevant, and how you can keep it more relevant. And apart from the curriculum, which we try to introduce from our perspective, additional subjects which may be of more relevant for people to undertake, and make it available to a larger cause. And also NASSCOM is doing that, and we as a part of NASSCOM also try and do that. That is the first part. But as a company, when we look at it, we hire for learnability, because the skills keep on changing every time, so that you have to do it. But to your question, how do you keep this people excited? I would really like to just hear about it. If there are 10 experts, we are also learning. But at a high level, if I may say that there are three parts which are important. One is autonomy. I think people want to decide what they want to work and from where they want to work. That is the first thing, and we are creating as much flexibility, and to whether it is for the women's and for the other people, so that they can have a better work-life balance as people prefer. At the same time, be more productive and contribute. So I think that that is the first point. And the new generation is very, very clear about having this autonomy, having these choices. You have seen it, even some large companies in US having the backslash when they try to push for certain policies. So that's globally applicable. The second is mastery. I think everybody wants to learn, and this learnability, as I mentioned to you, how you enable them to get more skills and get them the expertise. How the company can contribute to make them experts, how we can contribute to them, make them better professional, is becoming very, very important. And the last but not the least, and it is very, very important, is the purpose. And as a company, I think this is becoming more important. And while people think that everybody makes a change for money, which is certainly an important part, but I think the young generation is also wants to know the purpose, and that is becoming more and more relevant for them as well as the other individuals. And we have seen that. I mean, we have a very passionate team which has been with us in our case of industry for 15-20 years. And the one reason I see is the purpose. And we have a very, what you can call it, reimagining mobility. So anybody who is very, very interested in the changes which are happening in this technology for a cleaner, smarter, and safer world. So the idea, but what we are trying to do is, how do you bring it from something which is a statement to your day-to-day life and how people can appreciate it, whether it is through CSR, and actually the work we do is very, very relevant to our vision. So that's what we are trying to do. And as people connect to this bigger purpose, hopefully they will see a reason to contribute to that purpose. But let me be very honest, we are also learning on this area. It's for most of the people, I guess.
No, I think very, very candid response, and your point around purpose, I think it hits people a little later. They don't see it upfront in the face. I remember one CEO sharing a few years back, and this is before digital became a fad, that this generation doesn't want to be given a standard operating procedure that go ahead and solve the problem. They rather want to be told the problem and they'll figure their way out. And how as organizations or enterprises we enable that is perhaps really the crux of it. I think I'll move to perhaps the final question for the day, which is both of you are extremely established business leaders, pioneers in your own right? I mean, from your lens, the world is tech and tech is world. But then if we look at reality on the ground, I've been working in this space also for a significant period of time. India as a traditional business is yet to see that full power of tech get unleashed, right? I mean, and we can rattle off different forms of technology or digital. As your closing comments, what would be, I would say, a few points that India Inc. should perhaps take into consideration to really drive the maximum potential out of digital, the gains we see, and anything that you have seen, either a global experience or a regional one, that you believe that India should be doing different. Kishor, if you go first, and then Vaishali, we'll wrap up with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, at least I can talk it. I can say it from my point of view and my organization point of view. The first thing we feel is the technology speed is very important, and what you have to have is a very deep knowledge of domain. It is extremely important in our view, and we are becoming more and more domain centric. Actually, we don't do anything other than mobility. So we have this 10,000 people just focusing on mobility and trying to solve the problems in the mobility. So first, in my opinion, is focus, because that brings us a very strong domain knowledge. But second, then solve a real business or real clients' issues. And the ability to solve that becomes very, very important. And last but not the least is not only innovation, but the speed of innovation. I think that is becoming very important. We are focusing on these areas for now.
Very well said. I don't think I can top that answer, but I'll add my 2 cents. So this, I have an inside view into perhaps the biggest technology phase so far. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more into what's happening in the country. I get to work with brick and mortar traditional companies trying to introduce digital into their way of thinking. Like I said earlier, a digital, whether it's a bank trying to acquire customers through a digital channel, whether it is a brick and mortar manufacturing companies trying to integrate IIoT into their solutions and making a connected, factory, whether it's a car company trying to build software into their cars. And then on the other hand, I have businesses like startups trying to disrupt everything that a brick and mortar company has done for the last 70 years. And I think this unique situation where, I mean, you asked me, what is it that's happening globally that we can learn? I think, of course, there are several case studies I see, particularly in the cloud and tech space. There are banks who have done data center exits. There are manufacturing companies who have connected their factories. But the spirit of the Indian startup, I think I am yet to see another country which has evolved so quickly in a short span of 3 to 4 years. Startups are eating the margins of very, very well-established players. This has been happening globally for a long time, but in India, the pace at which our startups are just eating away at the margins. I think, someone at AWS has said that your margin is my opportunity. And that is happening in India as we speak. So I think there's this beautiful sort of ecosystem of startups doing things, being agile, brick and mortar companies trying to reinvent themselves. And this ecosystem is going to play out. And if I were to look at AWS around the world, I have sort of, a view into it. I think India, if I were to pick one country that I want to be in for the next 5 years, it is India and no other place in the world. It's this beautiful conglomeration of early stage startups, mature startups, brick and mortar companies, manufacturing coming together and sort of disrupting the nation to become hopefully very soon a $5 trillion economy.
No, thank you so much. I think clearly three very passionate Indians here in the room. One obviously sitting from her cozy environment at Singapore, but I'm sure Vaishali, your heart is here and so is your support. But indeed, we look forward to a decade or couple of decades of bursting innovation and much more. And I'm sure we will see small become big, big become small, and then perhaps big become even mega big. But till that time, wishing both of you a lot of more years, months, and weeks of innovation ahead. We look forward to staying connected, and thank you for your great insights over the part of this fireside chat. And again, thanks to ET Edge and to AWS for triggering this all-important wave of innovation and how India can really benefit. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.